It started with a message, just one, a smile emoji sent through a dating app, a small tap on the screen that would soon unravel a man's entire world. His name was Darren. He was in his late 40s, soft-spoken, recently divorced, and finally beginning to put his life back together. Tush. He wasn't rich, but he was stable. He had his own business, a modest home, and a quiet life. He wasn't looking for anything dramatic, just someone to talk to, someone to come home to, someone who wouldn't leave. Then she appeared. She was young, beautiful, charismatic. She told him she didn't care about his age. She said she was tired of immature boys and wanted a real man. She said all the right things at all the right times. Darren fell hard and fast. Within weeks, he was buying her gifts. He flew her into his city, set her up in his house, even gave her access to his bank card. His friends tried to warn him. They said she was too new, too perfect, too fast. But Darren didn't want to hear it. He believed she was different. He believed she genuinely loved him. She cooked for him, ran errands, called him babe in front of strangers. She posted photos of their dinners, tagged him in posts, smiled for selfies in the car he bought her. And for a while, Darren was happier than he had been in years. But slowly, things began to shift. She started coming home late. She took phone calls in the other room and always whispered when he walked in. She began locking her phone. When he asked her what was going on, she would get angry, then emotional, then apologize. Darren wanted to believe her, so he did, again and again. Then one day she disappeared. No note, no explanation. She was gone for 4 days. When she came back, she was crying. She said she panicked, said she was overwhelmed. She begged for forgiveness, promising that it would never happen again. Darren forgave her, but that would be the last time. Just 5 days later, Darren was found dead in his own home. Police entered the house after his business partner reported him missing. The front door was slightly open. The house was eerily quiet. And then they saw it. A trail of blood leading down the hallway. Darren's body was found lying face down, covered in bruises and wounds that indicated a violent struggle. His phone was smashed. His wallet was missing. So were the car keys. And the woman he had trusted, the one he gave a home, a car, and a second chance to, was nowhere to be found. What came next stunned even the most experienced investigators. Her real name wasn't what she told him. Her background was fabricated. Her identity was built on lies. And what detectives uncovered would lead to one of the most twisted love stories ever documented. This is the story of a man who gave everything for love, and the woman who gave him nothing but betrayal, destruction, and death. He offered her a new life. She gave him his last breath, but what no one saw coming was who she really was. Before we go any further, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Stories like this aren't just shocking, they're warnings. Warnings that can save someone you love. So turn on the bell, share this with someone who trusts too easily, and stay with me, because what happens next will break your heart. Mark Reynolds was the kind of man most people overlooked. He wasn't loud, he didn't crave the spotlight, but behind his quiet presence was a man who had built something from nothing. At 49 years old, Mark was the founder of a small but thriving tech company in Dallas, Texas. He worked with local businesses, helping them transition into digital platforms. Nothing flashy, nothing viral, just steady, reliable, meaningful work. People knew him as dependable, detail-oriented, the guy who would fix your website at midnight if you needed it. He built systems for others, but when it came to his own life, everything was falling apart. Mark had been divorced for nearly 7 years. 2 kids, both teenagers, lived with their mother in another state. The split hadn't been messy, but it left him hollow. He didn't date much after the divorce. In fact, he didn't date at all for nearly 5 years. He poured everything into his work, his clients, and his quiet routines. He was the guy who took the same route to the office every day, the guy who always brought lunch from home, the guy who remembered birthdays, even for people who forgot his. He wasn't rich by Silicon Valley standards, but he had saved enough to live comfortably. He had a nice house in the suburbs, a silver SUV in the driveway, a spacious backyard with a grill he barely used, and a guest room that no one ever stayed in. His sister, Angela, once said, "Mark always gave too much, especially to the wrong people." But at the time, no one knew how true those words would become. Mark wasn't naive. He wasn't reckless, but he was lonely, deeply, painfully lonely. and loneliness has a way of making even the smartest people vulnerable. His friends had noticed it, especially in the last couple of years. They said he started showing up to game nights just to be around people. He began texting more, calling more, reaching out when he never used to. They thought he was healing, that he was finally opening up, that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to love again. But beneath the surface, Mark was carrying something heavier. Of coming home to silence, of making dinner for one, of scrolling through photos of his kids growing up without him. He was tired of pretending he was okay when he wasn't. So when she showed up, when someone finally looked at him like he mattered, he let his guard down. He wasn't thinking about caution or red flags. He was thinking about connection, about how good it felt to have someone text him good morning, about how long it had been since someone reached across the table and touched his hand. She made him feel seen again, wanted, needed. That's what broke him, and that's what got him killed. What no one knew, what Mark himself never suspected, was that he wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. Her name was Tasha Monroe. At least, that's what she told him. She said she was 32, a freelance interior designer, born in Miami, raised in Atlanta, currently living in Houston. She claimed she was looking to relocate and start over. New city, new people. New energy. She wanted to build with someone, not just date, not just hang out, build something real. That's what her dating profile said. And to Mark, that sounded like everything he'd been waiting to hear. They met on a luxury dating app, one of those niche platforms where the women are models and influencers, and the men are tech founders, surgeons, or athletes. Mark had only joined out of curiosity. A friend dared him to create a profile. He never expected a match, not with someone like her. Tasha's profile was stunning. Her photos looked like they were clipped out of a fashion magazine. Sunsets in Tulum, rooftop wine bars, perfect lighting, effortless beauty. She had soft curls, a velvet smile, and eyes that seemed to promise warmth. In one photo, she held a dog. In another, she posed beside a Tesla. Every image told a story of elegance and mystery. Mark messaged her first. He didn't expect a reply. But within 10 minutes, she wrote back. From there, everything moved quickly. Daily messages turned into long phone calls, then FaceTime, then late-night conversations about childhood, fears, dreams. Tasha told him she'd been hurt in the past, cheated on, abandoned, lied to. She said she had walls, but something about Mark made her feel safe. She told him he was different, and Mark believed it. He liked how she spoke softly, how she asked about his day, how she remembered little things, like his favorite tea or how his dog had arthritis. For the first time in years, someone wasn't just listening. They were seeing him. 2 weeks in, she called him my person. 3 weeks in, she said, I've never felt this way before. 4 weeks in, she flew to Dallas and never left. She arrived with just 2 suitcases and a story. She said her lease had ended suddenly. She said she'd been planning to move anyway. She said being with him made her feel grounded. Mark cleared out his guest room. He bought her favorite shampoo. He stocked the fridge with almond milk, blueberries, and non-dairy creamer. He was all in. His friends were cautious. They said, "You barely know her, Mark." They asked, "What's the rush?" They hinted, "Doesn't this feel too good to be true?" But Mark defended her every time. "She makes me feel alive again," he said. "She's been through a lot. She just needs someone who won't give up on her." He wasn't blind. He saw the red flags, but he didn't want to believe them. Tasha rarely talked about her family. When she did, it was vague. Something about being estranged, something about toxic energy and starting fresh. She avoided questions about her past jobs, said people had taken advantage of her, that she had trust issues that she was trying to heal. Mark listened. He believed. But then, money became a constant topic. Tasha talked about how hard things had been lately. She mentioned student loans, credit card debt, a bad breakup that left her financially drained. She said she didn't want help, but her voice always cracked when she said it. She said she hated asking for anything, but she always did. First it was gas money, then groceries, then a new phone, because hers suddenly stopped working. Then rent money, even though she was living with Mark for free. But every time she asked, she wrapped it in affection. She'd curl up beside him, kiss his cheek, whisper, "Thank you," a dozen times. She said she'd pay him back once she landed on her feet, that she just needed a little breathing room. And Mark, he kept giving. Because for a man who had spent years alone, A woman like Tasha didn't feel like a red flag. She felt like a miracle. He didn't realize yet that she wasn't building a future with him. She was draining the life he had left. And slowly, piece by piece, he was disappearing. His time, his money, his identity, and eventually, his safety. But in this moment, none of that had surfaced. Not yet. Right now, Mark was still smiling when she walked into the room, still believing in second chances, still hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally gotten it right. But what Mark didn't know was that Tasha Monroe had done this before. And this time, she wasn't just after his heart. She was after everything. By the time summer rolled around, Mark wasn't just in love. He was convinced he had found his forever. So when Tasha said she wanted to start fresh in a new city, he didn't hesitate. She told him Atlanta had always felt like home. She missed the vibe, the food, the people. She said she could see herself thriving there. And Mark, wanting to be part of that vision, said the words that sealed his fate. Let's go. In July, he flew her out first class, booked her into a high-rise hotel while he sorted out logistics. Then, within weeks, he did the unthinkable. He bought her a BMW X5 in full cash, clean title in her name. He said she needed something reliable to get around and build her new life. But that wasn't all. He also closed on a 2-bedroom luxury condo just outside Buckhead. Modern finish, city view, 24-hour concierge. Paid the deposit, furnished it, stocked the fridge, set up the Wi-Fi. Everything. As if he was moving in too. But he wasn't. Tasha moved in alone. Mark, now back and forth between Dallas and Atlanta, tried to convince his friends that everything was fine, that this was normal, that he was just supporting the woman he loved. But behind closed doors, things were changing. Tasha had started making decisions for him, small at first, then larger, what clients he should drop, who he should cut off. She'd say things like, "Why do you let people walk all over you? Your friends don't respect your time. Your sister never supports your happiness." And Mark listened, because he trusted her. Slowly, his life became narrower. Phone calls stopped. Group chats went silent. He missed a family reunion, didn't show up for a friend's wedding. The people who once surrounded Mark began to fade from his life, pushed out, one, by a woman who always had a reason, and always wanted control. In Atlanta, the neighbors noticed early on. At first, it was just the car, flashy, loud, speeding into the complex at odd hours. Then came the noise, arguments, slammed doors, voices echoing down the hallway at 1 a.m. They weren't small disagreements, they were explosive. One neighbor later said, "You'd hear her screaming like she was possessed, then dead silence, then music blasting like nothing happened." Mark never called the police, never made a report, never spoke about it, but his face told the story. Dark circles, nervous smiles, the look of a man who didn't know how to ask for help. Then came the late-night phone calls. Tasha would step out around midnight. Sometimes she'd say she was going for a walk. Other times she claimed she needed air. She'd leave dressed up, heels, lipstick, expensive perfume, and disappear for hours. Mark would wait. Sometimes he'd call. Sometimes she wouldn't answer. When she returned, she always had an explanation. A friend emergency, a lost phone, a flat tire, and every time she'd flip it on him. "Why don't you trust me? You're trying to control me now? After everything I gave up for you?" And Mark, exhausted, confused, ashamed, would apologize. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her, because if he didn't, then he'd have to face the truth, that he'd given up his peace, his money, his connections, and his safety for someone he didn't really know. But he wasn't ready to face that yet. He still thought he could fix it, still thought love would win, still thought Tasha Monroe was who she claimed to be. What he didn't know was that Tasha had already started planning her exit. And when she left, she wouldn't leave quietly. By September, something had changed in Mark. He didn't say it out loud, not to his friends, not to his sister, not even to himself. But deep down in the quiet places of his mind, he started to feel it. A question he couldn't shake, a weight in his chest. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just the money anymore, or the isolation, or the way Tasha snapped whenever he asked a question about her past. It was everything. Her disappearing acts, her changing stories, her shifting moods, and how no matter what he gave her, it was never enough. Mark had always believed that love required patience. That trust meant forgiveness. But this was different. He was starting to feel like he didn't know the woman he let into his life. And for the first time, he did something he'd never done before. He stopped trusting her. Quietly, cautiously, Mark hired a private investigator. He found a discreet firm just outside of Atlanta. No social media, no paper trail. He paid in cash, gave them only the information he had. Her name, phone number, car details, and a copy of her ID, at least the one she gave him. He told the investigator he just wanted peace of mind. But what he got was something else entirely. The results came back in less than a week. Tasha Monroe didn't exist. There was no birth certificate, no high school records, no tax filings, no trace of any interior design license in any state. The photo on the ID she gave him? Real. But the name? Completely fake. Her real name was Danielle Harper, age 36, born in Florida, arrested 4 times between 2012 and 2018. Charges included fraud, forgery, grand theft, and identity theft. She had multiple aliases, multiple driver's licenses, multiple victims. She had once posed as a nurse and scammed an elderly man out of $80,000. In another case, she pretended to be a fashion buyer, conned a business partner into funding a fake showroom, then vanished overnight. In every case, it was the same pattern. She'd create a character, move in fast, get close, drain their finances, then disappear before the fallout caught up to her. And now, she was with Mark, living in a condo he paid for, driving a car in her name, controlling his decisions, his bank account, his state of mind. The PI laid it out plainly. She's done this before. She's dangerous. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Mark was shaken. He wasn't a naive man. He wasn't reckless. But love, real or not, had clouded his instincts. And now all the warnings, all the red flags were screaming at him. He knew what he had to do. He planned to confront her. He told his sister he'd be back in Dallas within the week, told a close friend to keep his phone nearby. He even drafted an email to his attorney about reclaiming assets. It was the first time in months he'd felt in control. But then, something happened. Mark stopped answering his phone. He missed a scheduled Zoom meeting with his legal team. Didn't show up to a lunch with his sister. His WhatsApp messages stopped showing the read receipts. At first, people thought maybe he needed space. Maybe he'd gone off the grid to regroup. But when his dog sitter called and said the key was still under the mat and the dog hadn't been picked up, that's when the fear set in. A friend drove to the condo in Atlanta. The car was gone. No one answered the buzzer. Inside the unit, the lights were off, blinds drawn, mail untouched. A faint smell lingered in the hallway. Mark Reynolds was missing. And the last person to see him alive was the woman who never really existed. The last confirmed sighting of Mark Reynolds was at 7:48 p.m. on a Friday evening. Surveillance footage from the condo garage showed him stepping out of the elevator, phone in hand, dressed in his usual black hoodie and jeans. His expression looked focused, determined, like a man preparing to confront a truth he didn't want to believe. That was the night he was planning to finally talk to Tasha, or rather, Danielle, the woman he had flown across the country for. The woman now tied to multiple scams. The woman who might have just targeted him from the very beginning. He entered his condo. The door closed, and from that moment on, no one ever saw Mark Reynolds again. By Saturday morning, concern turned to dread. His sister, Olivia, called once, then again, then 12 more times over the next few hours. Every call rang out, straight to voicemail. She texted, "Hey, just checking in, you okay? Getting worried, please call. Mark, this isn't funny." She contacted a friend in Atlanta, asked him to check the condo, but the door was locked. No sign of movement, no response to knocks. The blinds were shut, lights off. The building concierge hadn't seen him since Friday evening. On Sunday, the situation escalated. The BMW was found, abandoned on a desolate street near a warehouse district 6 miles away. Driver's door cracked open, engine off, no keys, no wallet, no phone. Just Mark's jacket crumpled in the passenger seat and a broken necklace on the floor. The vehicle was towed and tagged for forensic review. And by Sunday night, Olivia did what no sister ever wants to do. She filed a missing persons report. Atlanta PD moved fast. Mark wasn't just another name. He had resources, contacts, a digital footprint that should have been lighting up. But there was nothing. No ATM withdrawals, no Uber logs, no emails, no pings from his phone. Detectives secured a warrant and entered the condo. What they found inside changed everything. The air inside the apartment was stale, heavy, still. On the surface, things looked tidy. Couch pillows in place, wine glasses washed, fridge humming quietly. But then, in the hallway, they noticed something. A faint smear on the floor, near the bedroom door. They followed it, and there it was. Blood. A thin trail stretching into the bedroom. Some of it smeared, some of it dried, some of it covered, poorly, by a throw rug that didn't belong there. The room itself was in disarray. Sheets yanked off the bed, a lamp knocked over, phone charger ripped from the wall. There were scuff marks on the floor, like someone had been dragged, and on the bathroom counter, 2 toothbrushes, one snapped in half. But the most chilling detail? Mark's phone, completely shattered, wedged beneath the dresser. It hadn't been touched, still powered off, covered in dust and tiny fragments of broken glass. And yet, no sign of Mark. No body, no fingerprints on the windows, no signs of forced entry. Just the overwhelming sense that something violent had happened here. Something planned, something personal, and someone had taken the time to clean it up just enough to buy time. Neighbors were questioned. Footage was pulled. At 2:14 a.m. that same Friday night, cameras showed the BMW pulling out of the garage. In the driver's seat was a woman, alone. The timestamp confirmed what detectives feared. Mark never left that apartment alive, and whoever drove away in that car had something to hide. By Monday morning, Atlanta Homicide had taken over the case. It was no longer just a missing person investigation. There was blood, there was an abandoned vehicle, and there was a woman who now had more names than answers. They began with the obvious lead. Tasha Monroe, whose real name was Danielle Harper, was brought in for questioning. She arrived at the station wearing sunglasses, designer boots, and not a trace of emotion. Detectives asked where she had been that weekend. She said she had driven to visit a friend outside the city. A quick weekend getaway. No phone reception, no idea Mark was even missing. Her tone, calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. She didn't flinch when they mentioned his car, or the blood in the condo, or the fact that no one had heard from him in 3 days. When they asked for her phone, she hesitated. Then she said something that made the entire room pause. "I don't have it anymore. I lost it on the drive back." Lost it. A brand new iPhone. Gone. Just like that. She didn't file a report, didn't try to recover it, just shrugged it off, and it didn't sit right with the lead detective. So they kept her in the room longer, pushed harder, asked again about that weekend, minute by minute. And that's when her story started to shift. At first, she said she left Friday afternoon. Then it became Friday evening. Then she wasn't sure. Maybe it was Saturday morning? The inconsistencies were piling up fast. And then came the break. Police got a warrant for her phone records, not from the physical device, but from the carrier. Cell tower data showed that on the night Mark disappeared, her phone was pinging less than 3 miles from a dense, wooded area north of Atlanta, around 3:08 a.m. That's hours after she claimed to have left the city, and hours after Mark was last seen. The area? Known for its remote access roads, poor lighting, rare patrols. It wasn't a place people casually stopped at, not at that time of night. When detectives asked about it, she went silent. No excuse, no explanation, just silence. And then she asked for a lawyer. By the time her attorney arrived, the tone had shifted. Danielle refused to answer any more questions. She stopped cooperating completely, but the investigation didn't stop. In fact, it was just getting started. Detectives obtained security footage from a gas station near the wooded area. Timestamp 2:47 a.m. A woman matching Danielle's appearance steps out of the BMW. She walks inside, buys cleaning supplies, trash bags, bleach, rubber gloves. Her head is down. She pays in cash. It's not definitive proof, but it's damning. And when officers replayed the footage, they noticed something chilling. She was wearing the same outfit from earlier surveillance inside the condo building, meaning she had never gone back home to change. She left the condo and went straight there, to that gas station, to that forested area. Back at Mark's condo, forensic teams worked day and night. Luminol revealed more blood beneath the tiles, On the baseboards, the edge of the mattress, the trail led into the bathroom and stopped at the drain. There was no doubt in anyone's mind. Something violent happened there, and Danielle Harper, whether she admitted it or not, was at the center of it all. With mounting evidence and growing public pressure, police finally made their move. Danielle Harper was arrested on a Wednesday morning at a luxury spa outside of Atlanta. She didn't resist. In fact, when officers approached her, she simply placed her phone down on the counter, lifted her hand slowly, and whispered, "I was wondering when you'd come." But the moment she was taken into custody, the case took a turn no one saw coming. Because as investigators dug deeper into her past, a second name began to surface, one that had been quietly connected to Danielle for years. His name was Reggie Torres, a 42-year-old with a rap sheet nearly as long as Danielle's list of aliases. He wasn't just a former boyfriend. He was a partner, a ghost in the shadows, a man who had disappeared from the system years ago. No job, no taxes, no online presence, but whose fingerprints were all over a string of unsolved financial scams across 4 states. Police began to put the pieces together: bank transactions, shared burner phones, rental cars paid in cash, surveillance from years ago showing Danielle and Reggie dining together at upscale restaurants in Los Angeles, Miami, even New Orleans. They weren't just lovers once. They were con artists, a team, and this time their mark had been Mark Reynolds. According to police, Reggie was the one who made the first move. He created a fake business opportunity sent to Mark through a friend of a friend channel, the kind of deal designed to look real enough to lure in someone successful, but emotionally distracted. Mark agreed to meet. The location? A quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, one Reggie had used before. From there, everything spiraled. Danielle played her part, building trust, creating intimacy, disarming Mark's suspicion just long enough for Reggie to step in behind the scenes. They had a plan: get Mark to invest, isolate him, manipulate his emotions, and once he handed over the money, make sure he never talked. But things didn't go exactly as planned. Mark started getting suspicious. He hired a private investigator. He began pulling away. He was preparing to cut her off. And that's when their scheme turned deadly. Police now believe Reggie arrived in Atlanta the day before Mark vanished. He stayed in a short-term rental under a fake name. The cell tower data confirmed it. His burner phone pinged just blocks from Mark's condo at 2:12 a.m. Security footage from the same night shows a second figure entering the parking garage, a hooded man walking just steps behind Danielle. For months, he had remained invisible. Now his face was in plain sight. And with that, authorities launched a manhunt across multiple states to track him down. Danielle, sitting in an interrogation room, refused to say a word, but her silence spoke volumes. This wasn't just about greed. It was about betrayal, manipulation, and cold, calculated deception. And together, they had destroyed a man who only ever wanted love. The courtroom was silent, not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that settles heavy in your chest. A silence that holds pain, anger, grief. After months of investigation, after weeks of pretrial motions and delays, the trial of Danielle Harper and Reggie Torres began on a cold Monday morning in Fulton County Superior Court. Mark Reynolds' family sat in the front row, his sister, his teenage son, and his 9-year-old daughter, dressed in black, clutching tissues, trying to be brave. Danielle entered the courtroom first, her face blank. No emotion, no eye contact. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her hands folded in front of her. You wouldn't think she was on trial for murder. Reggie was brought in next, shackled, expressionless, his eyes scanning the room like none of it mattered. The prosecution wasted no time. They presented every detail: the surveillance footage, the financial trail, the private investigator's findings, forensics from the condo, the phone data that placed both Danielle and Reggie near the wooded area on the night Mark disappeared. They painted a clear picture. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a premeditated execution, a calculated plan to strip a man of everything and leave nothing behind. But the most powerful moment of the trial didn't come from the prosecutors. It came from Mark's sister, who stood before the court with tears in her eyes and a letter in her shaking hands. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Mark was the kind of man who couldn't walk past a homeless person without offering help. He believed in love, believed in second chances, And you took that goodness and used it as a weapon. You used his heart against him. She looked directly at Danielle, and for a moment, even the judge seemed to hold his breath. Next came Mark's son, just 17 years old. He stepped up to the podium, eyes red, hands trembling. He said just 9 words. He was my hero, and you broke everything. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Danielle didn't flinch. She showed no remorse. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she cry. Reggie sat with his arms crossed, expression locked in stone. The defense tried to argue for reduced charges, claiming Danielle was manipulated, that Reggie was the mastermind, but the jury didn't buy it. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the verdict was unanimous, guilty, on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy, financial fraud, destruction of evidence. When the judge delivered the sentence, his words echoed in the courtroom like thunder. You took a kind man's life for greed. You planned it. You carried it out. And you showed no remorse. You will never hurt anyone again. Danielle Harper, life in prison without parole. Reggie Torres, life in prison without parole. No chance of release. No possibility of redemption. Justice, finally delivered. But even as the gavel came down and the cameras turned away, one truth remained. Mark Reynolds was gone. And all he ever did was love the wrong person. In the months that followed the trial, the courtroom lights dimmed, the headlines faded, but for Mark Reynolds' family, the pain didn't go anywhere. His children returned to a home that no longer echoed with their father's laughter. His sister, once his closest confidant, now spent her nights staring at a photo on her mantle, whispering prayers into silence. But they refused to let his story end with tragedy. They created something in his name. The Mark Reynolds Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting victims of online dating fraud and emotional manipulation. What started as one family's grief became a lifeline for hundreds of people who had suffered in silence. They hosted workshops. They funded investigations. They pushed for policy changes to regulate dating platforms more strictly. They turned their heartbreak into something that could save lives. Because Mark's legacy wasn't just in the business he built, or the children he loved, or the friends he helped. His legacy was in hope. Even in his final moments, he still believed love was possible. He still believed people could change, and that belief was used against him. In one of her final interviews, Mark's sister stood on the steps of the courthouse, holding a photo of her brother, smiling, arms around his kids, the sun setting behind them. With tears in her eyes, she said, "He believed in love again," and she turned that hope into horror. That line was quoted across newspapers, reposted on social media, etched into memorial plaques. Because it wasn't just about Mark, it was about all of us. Any of us could be him. Any of us could be blinded by charm, by beauty, by the need to feel wanted. But sometimes the person standing closest to you is the one holding the knife. Be careful who you trust. Evil often wears a beautiful face. If you found this story shocking, share it to help others stay safe. And if you'd like more real cases like this, hit that subscribe button and join our journey into the Untold Crime Chronicles.